So, good afternoon, everyone. And I'm doing a video series for AEW, and I'm talking about potential all in matches for AEW All In, given the fact that, a lot of people have kind of complained a little bit about AEW when they've been doing their pay-per-views. Like they throw a lot of matches together, there's not a lot of build and story. And then also really when you think about All In, pardon me, got the hiccups, that when you think about All In, there's a lot of things that they can do to make this one of the best shows ever. And one of the big things is to pivot. And one of the big things is to think about, okay, we need to start some reset buttons. Like we need to have match for the women's division that show the direction where men wrestlers are going to take. And we should think about the heavyweight championship picture. And then we should also just be rewarding people who have been with the company for a long time. But one thing I've advocated is, a few Ring of Honor matches. And I've talked about, that they should have Athena defend her title. They should have, the ROH champion Bandito defend his title. And then I also was thinking about the ROH Trios Championships because they're held by Dustin, Rhodes, and the Von Erich boys. And actually, one really bad thing about their team is that they've not defended the titles in over a year, which is very similar to Dean Ambrose when he was in WWE and he had the U.S. title. He wasn't doing a lot of defenses, or Roman Reigns. So it really does not make sense for them to have a title for that long, early year-long reign without a defense. And I was saying to myself, also too, the Von Erichs are very big for Texas. Kevin Von Erich's up there in age. We have to be honest, like he and Dustin could pass away soon. And also Jake the Snake Roberts. So I was thinking to myself, what would be a good match for AEW All In? Even like the pre-show should have some Ring of Honor matches to kind of elevate some stars. And I was saying to myself, what would happen if you have the MXN collection with Johnny TV and Dalton Castle and the boys versus, versus Dustin and the Von Erichs. So how I would do this is that I would make this a Freebird rule type of match, like a 4-on-4. So you would have, the two members of NXM, John Morrison and Dalton Castle versus Dustin, Sammy, and the Von Erich boys, like a 4-on-4 type of match, really. And the reason why you do that is because, honestly, like, Sammy Guevara is one of the four pillars. So, he needs a bit of a reset button. I think what he should do is have a feud with Dustin and then go after the ROH title and then be built up a little bit more strongly, and then you go into a direction with Sammy Guevara. Like, I think that he is salvageable, but he needs the right build and the right story. Like, he's almost just like Daniel Garcia in a sense, where it's really poor presentation that's been impacting Sammy. And then I also will say that, you have veterans. You have Dustin Rhodes, give him a big match in Texas. You also have, Kevin Von Erich, give him a big match in Texas. The Von Erich boys, this is kind of controversial. Like the Von Erich boys and the MXN collections, they're known for, the MXM collection's known for being with WWE. So you have like your, your former WWE people using AEW as a place to get better. That's okay, because they've not really shown what they can do, really. And then the other thing that you're doing is that you have the Von Erich boys. They're known for being the Von Erich and the Von Erich family. So you have the hype of the Texas crowd, really. And then also you have John Morrison and Dalton Castle. Like, John Morrison, in my opinion, is very underutilized in AEW. Like, there's no excuse for him to not be on the AEW roster. He's been a former Impact World Heavyweight Champion. He's been in WWE for a long time. He can still move and go. He has charisma. He should be one of those people winning matches. Like, he's almost like a Mark Briscoe in a way, where he's somebody that can do a lot more, but he's very underutilized. Like, honestly, if NXT is giving him a call, or WWE, he needs to leave the company, as soon as possible, really. He could be managing Taya Valkyrie and bringing her onto the AEW women's roster and having feuds with Toni Storm instead of just, floating around on Ring of Honor, really. Like, there's more that you can do. So there's a reset button for him. And then there's also Dalton Castle, which I'm a big fan of, because I think Dalton Castle, the whole, like, metrosexual gimmick and the spacesuit and everything like that, this is very tragic. Just like with Mark Briscoe, they're very, very, very underutilized. I did a video before, but I need to do another video on Dalton Castle. Like, Mark Briscoe's underutilized, and so is Dalton Castle. Because honestly, could you imagine Dalton Castle coming out, raising his arms, having the wings, and then you kind of see like like back, like right behind him, you see like like this drapery and other things like that, and you have like the boys and like so many like peacock guys running out and stuff like that. Visually it would be very very strong. If he was on pay-per-views for AEW, you have like this metrosexual, I think like Zoolander type of thing, like that would be so visually striking. And imagine and a very like New Orleans type of style. So that visually would look so good, and that would say, hey, he falls into the C word. He falls into a character. And one of the bad things about AEW is that they don't have characters like WWE. They have the Dave Meltzer strong style matches, but what's been lacking is character. What would be this? What about Dalton Castle trying to be like the King of Men or something like that, or him trying to win all the titles, or him saying, what, I should be the King of Men. The best way to be the king is to be the AEW champion. And then it's like what I've said, the other part is that you have people like Shane Taylor, Mark Briscoe, Dalton Castle, and Nick Wayne, I'll even say, and even like Matt Cardona, Big Cass and Big Bill, Athena. There are so many other people that are either Ring of Honor veterans that they purchased, or people who wrestle in Ring of Honor for so long. That's like, what the fuck are you doing to these people? These people need to be transferred over to AEW, and they can even be on Collision and then go on to Dynamite. Like, there's so much more that you can kind of do with these people, but it's really, really just unfortunate that these people are so like underutilized. So if you have Dalton Castle shine, that's like saying, hey, you know what? When we purchased another company, we actually have these people shine as well, really. You did stuff with Mark Briscoe, but the problem with Mark Briscoe is that he's kind of in mid-card hell, really. He's always going to job when he's supposed to job. You have, Dalton Castle. Like, yeah, he's out on injury, but what'd you do? You made him a jobber on AEW television. And then the other thing that I will say is you look at Mr. Iguana in WWE, that more than likely he's going to be a megastar in WWE because they purchased AAA and they're like, hey, we're not going to do something like AEW does where we're going to purchase another company and not have these people shine. Or look what happened when they brought in Ricky Starks and Stephanie Vaquer and a few other people who wrestled for AEW. The first thing that they did was they pushed them to the moon because they're like, this show, because we're showing that we can make our own stars from other people's. We can take other people who have been trashed. We can take trashed to treasure, not trash to treasure, but trashed to treasure. Underutilized to utilized. So AEW has to do the same thing. And also, too, I'm not sure how much Tony Khan paid for Ring of Honor. There's a report they paid $40 million or $20 million. But the problem is that it's like he's not gotten any return on investment. He's probably made maybe $1 or $2 million with Ring of Honor with all the pay-per-views they've done with them. But he's not really, like, found that, Ring of Honor star, really. Like, there's Shane Taylor who can talk in the microphone. There's Dalton Castle with his metrosexual gimmick. There's also Mark Briscoe, who could be a megastar with the way that he talks, really. He could be using Ring of Honor as a developmental for a lot of AEW wrestlers. But, one of the things that I've said with a good developmental is you should kind of show your next generation off a little bit more. Like I always say, if I was in WWE, one rule that I would have is during the Big Four pay-per-views, the NXT title should be defended, like at a Royal Rumble, SummerSlam, Survivor Series, WrestleMania, to be like, hey, look what these people are doing. Look what's going on at NXT. Let's show what the next generation can do, really. So it's really unfortunate that, they're not being utilized that well, really. And also when you have big shows like All In, it makes a lot of sense that you have, wrestlers in Ring of Honor have some matches, even on the pre-show, to be like, hey, look at the next generation. Or, hey, Dalton Castle, maybe he should not be on Ring of Honor. Maybe he needs to be graduated. Hey, there's Shane Taylor. Maybe he should be graduated. Mark Briscoe, Kyle Fletcher, people who've wrestled Ring of Honor for a while, maybe they should be AEW champion. Oh, you look at people like Nick Wayne, he should be having a match with Christian Cage, but look what he's been doing. He's been wrestling in Japan. He's been wrestling in Ring of Honor. You actually have to kind of utilize him a lot, really. So it's definitely, very, very unfortunate that you have a lot of these wrestlers that are on Ring of Honor that have the potential to be bigger deals, but not. And I also would say that if I was WWE, I would be giving Dalton Castle a call, because you put him on NXT or you put him on you put him on SmackDown with Pretty Deadly or something like that, really. or you have the boys and that whole gimmick and stuff like that, that's going to explode because that stands out really. That whole New Orleans gimmick, the boys, the Zoolander, the metrosexuality, the colorful colors, it's going to really blow up a lot. And it's really sad that AEW doesn't utilize Dalton Castle that much. But I really think that if you do a match between Dalton Castle, Dustin Rhodes, like Dalton Castle and MXM Collection with John Morrison, and then also Dustin and the Von Erich boys and Kevin Von Erich and Sammy, that's great. And then, like I've said about Dustin, the man's up there in age, really. I think he deserves more matches at All In, really. He's a good veteran. One of the best matches they ever had in AEW is Cody versus Dustin. So, you got to kind of reward that. And like I said, I think that Dustin should go after the ROH title in the future. You can give it back to Chris Jericho and do Jericho versus Dustin at All In 2026 in Wembley. Or, like I said, he should have done it this year. And I don't think they're going to do that unless, Chris Jericho comes back, hurts Bandito, hits him with the baseball bat, and then you do Dustin versus Jericho or something like that. Because you imagine the pop, really, with Dustin winning his first heavyweight title, and he has a reign for a couple of months, really. Or you do Dustin versus Sammy, and you have Sammy turn heel or something like that. It's almost like what I said with AEW, that a lot of these things, a lot of their big moments are not that hard to figure out. Like sometimes I'm at work, I'm cleaning a bathroom, sometimes I'm cleaning a bed, sometimes I'm loading my cart, sometimes I'm bullshitting playing play solitaire on my phone. But it's really, really, really sad that it's almost like, I just like, my brain just keeps like coming up with these ideas. I work with bleach all night. Maybe it's the bleach, but I come up with a lot of these really, really great like ideas for AEW. Really, like honestly, Tony Khan really needs to. He needs to like buy my videos and other things like that because I can really fix the company really. But these things make so much sense really. You got to utilize your Ring of Honor people, and you also got to utilize like people that you have in Ring of Honor that have so much potential really. So. It's definitely really unfortunate that they don't bring out the best in their talent completely. There are so many gold mines there. And then also, too, like, you look at Rusev and other people, like, that could be Dalton Castle or Shane Taylor or John Morrison and Taya Valkyrie one day. They could be like, hey, we'll go back to WWE because, we're not getting utilized in AEW that well. So, hopefully this will be a really great match. I think this will be really excellent. It'll be a great pre-show match. It would utilize everybody. You'll pop the Texas crowd with the Von Erichs. You'll give something to Kevin Von Erich because he's up there in age. He could die soon. Give something to Dustin. He could die soon because he's old. The Maximum Male models, they do have a good look. You utilize Dustin, Dalton Castle, who's been a veteran for 20 years. He deserves a chance on a bigger stage. So why not do that? So this match, I would totally hope that they do.